All right, I will say hello and welcome back to another episode of All About Balance. And this one is one that I've been looking forward to for a number of months. Today we have Mr. Jake St. Cross. Jake is a promoter of UKFC and the owner of Empire Grappling Tournament. Jake, hello, sir. How you doing?
I'm good. Yourself, fella?
Yes, all good, my friend. All good. I will first say an apology because this was supposed to happen yesterday or the day before, but I decided to fumble the bag entirely, and yeah, here we are. But as I said, this is a podcast that I've wanted to do for a little while. Obviously, I met you in Empire for the first time. Jesus, when was that? It was
Wales, was
the
it?
the Wales show. Yeah, so and that was a crazy day. It was the same day as Liam's Polaris fight against Chris Fishgold, and yeah, that was just a mental day. But yeah, how are things for you? How are things?
Yeah, slowly but surely feel like things are all opening back up per se. Waiting to see what Boris says this week. Hopefully, he gives us a bit of a roadmap to when we can start doing things. I'm keeping my eye on the European scene. I've seen that a Spanish combat event is going with fans on August 15th. So that
Okay.
gives me a bit of confidence going into the next few months.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think, so for instance, for us, for Pantheon, it's something that in order to conform to the regulations and conform to ensuring that fighters or athletes are safe and they're quarantined enough and there's enough testing and there's enough, various safeguards. The financial limitations that were put on us is just quite drastic at the moment. Like, is that something that obviously you've had to consider for UKFC and for Empire as well?
Yeah, not just for that, for myself also. I think we chatted on Instagram a few weeks ago where I
Yeah.
sort of said to you that I left my 9 to 5 job December 31st, 2019. So what's nearly 6, 7 months ago, on the premise that I built up the events to a point where I can at least pay myself a little bit to get by and pay my bills and start to build again and spend more time on what I love doing rather than working 9, 10 hours a day, coming home stressed and then having to it felt like I had to work because I didn't have the time to do it any other time. Whereas in now, I sort of have my own life. Before lockdown, I could go to the gym in the morning and then start work around midday, and no one was my boss anymore. But then obviously lockdown hit. I hadn't paid myself at that point anyway because I was waiting for things to start opening up for myself. But yeah, just crap situation. It's lucky I had savings. But yeah, with regards to the events, they are spectator events, so you
Absolutely.
rely on that as an income, not just to pay your own bills, but to pay for the event. The amount of people that go into not just Empire but UKFC, like referees, judges, runners,
Medical staff.
security, the list is endless, and obviously everyone wants to be paid a fair wage. I'm lucky enough to have a bubble of people where they're not bothered about being paid. My argument is if they do a job, they get paid, but they know if I was struggling, I could turn around to them and go, this time hasn't worked, and it'd be no skin off their back. They're helping me and they're helping the brand and on what they love doing, which is amazing to have them people around you. But it's like I've got something in the pipeline I will be announcing next week, which will cost Empire money. I won't be able to make any money from it, but I feel like that's the right thing to do. Money that I have earned in the past, where I can put it back into it and keep the sort of sport and the image alive.
Yeah, and I think that speaks. I mean, there's lots of things to speak about from that little passage there. The first is, I actually think it's probably more difficult to put on an Empire event than it is to put on a UKFC event, because obviously we've seen the blueprint now where there's been a couple of shows that have been MMA behind closed doors with no fans and it's been streamed online, right? But in order for you to put an Empire event, and if anyone's been to an Empire event, not only are they amazingly run, but it's also they're extremely busy places, right?
Yeah.
And the last couple of Empires, they've had to have caps because the amount of people that are registering and all this sort of stuff, right? But in order for you to get people in and out of the door competing on time, on schedule, and to put 500 people plus corners through the door is going to be almost impossible in a day, right? Almost impossible.
Yeah, I've thought about doing it on a smaller premise where maybe I have a smaller venue, depending on what regulations the government's saying due course, where I do it over a couple of days and it's stripped in and out at certain times. But yeah, it would be quite difficult because of you've got to think about it as well. If people say people should be wearing masks or PPE or sanitizer. Sanitizer is the easy one. You get it at the door, you put it on, and that should be quite straightforward, or on your feet, or depending on how you want to utilize it. With regards to masks, as soon as you touch a mask to have something to eat, pull it down for a drink or whatever, they become technically null and void. So it's technically better to just not wear a mask and just keep the social distancing if and where possible. If you want to wear a mask, it's entirely up to you. But once you start touching it and moving it and stuff like that, it becomes null and void. That's the crazy thing. And plus, in this combat sports setting, if you're in a tournament, you're going to be facing a few different bodies.
Yeah.
That's harder. Whereas in a submission, grappling, sub-only MMA fight, you're only going to be in contact with one other person outside of your cornerman bubble. That's a lot easier to put on. They sign a waiver that they're both happy to fight each other. It's 15-minute fight, whatever it is. That's easy to do. Tournaments, it could be. If I had to do one right now and I was allowed to do tournaments, I'd probably cap it at 8 a division just to make it better for numbers.
Yeah.
But you've been there as well, and the guys, I've had divisions where they've been close to 20 in a division, which takes possibly 2 hours to do. It's a long-winded process. It's not like I can't do it. It's just a matter of making sure that people feel safe. There's a very difference now between feeling safe and being safe. I don't think anyone can be 100% safe until there's a vaccine. It's just acting and playing safe as much as possible.
For sure. And I think that there's going to be a really weird division, I think, between people that just don't give a fuck and that are happy to put themselves into the same situations that they were in prior to lockdown. And then there'll be people that, sort of are in the middle ground that are kind of worried, but are kind of going to be willing to do it with a little bit of persuasion. And then there's going to be the people that are extremely cautious and people that, although they may want to turn up to an Empire grappling tournament or come to a UKFC event, they're going to be extremely cautious about the precautions that you're putting in place. And I think that is something that's going to be really difficult for a lot of shows. I mean, obviously we saw Grapple Fest go ahead really successfully the other weekend, and obviously there was no fans, but a lot of my friendship base and the jiu-jitsu base were watching it. They tuned into Flow to watch it, so that's a success story for them. But when they are ready to go back to their venue and they're ready to put on a show, I think it's going to be difficult for every promotion, unless you're the UFC, to get fans in the door and to get fans in the door feeling safe.
Yeah, I think I'm probably in that middle ground where, because I need to earn money, I haven't really got a choice. So I kind of put a lot of things in the back of my mind. It's just kind of get out there. There's always going to be a risk. I'm probably in the bracket where I'm not immune is probably the wrong word, but I'm probably safer than a lot of people because I'm actively fit. I'm young. It doesn't mean that I'm immune, but I'm close to it as possible. But my main thing is passing it on to people that are possibly more susceptible, and that's probably my worst fear, is knowing that I've harmed someone, whether it could be just getting it and then worrying. That's more my thought process. I would gladly go out tomorrow and compete or do an event if I could, but there's a lot of people out there, and it sounds really weird to say, but there's a lot of people out there that can cause a lot of damage online by, if I announce an event tomorrow that's a tournament with fans and everything, even though the government were to say it, I would get slagged off for that. I would be one of the people, well, why are you doing that? That's not fair. And people need to see both sides. There's a lot of people in this situation right now where they are either kept on working, monetary's not a problem, they've been furloughed, so they're basically doing nothing and getting paid a lot of their wage. And then there's the extreme where self-employed people aren't getting a penny, aren't getting support. And I'm one of them. I'm not angry at the government for that. I can see where I fell through the gaps. I'm newly into this. I've never paid myself before. There's no backtrack of it because I had a 9 to 5. There's no point in paying anything from Empire or whatever I do until I was in a position to do it full time, because tax repercussions and whatever, and it would have been a waste of loss of money. Whereas in this year, I plan to do that. If this would have happened in 2 years, I would have been fine. But I feel like people need to understand and need to really grasp that people would only do things if they really need to. And I'm not at that point yet, but maybe at the end of the year, I have to run events no matter what. And it's just the way it is. There is some people out there that seem to are confused with what the government's been telling them. It's like, well, why are you opening things back up? The virus hasn't gone. It wasn't locked down until the virus is gone. It was to protect the NHS, and we've far exceeded that, which people don't seem to understand. Yes, worse things can happen. It could be a massive second wave, and it can get to that point. But they're putting things in place. People need, if you don't want to go out and like put yourself in a position where you can be harmed by this virus, don't. But other people need to start living their lives, and you can't live like this for years. You physically can't. People mentally are struggling already.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I mean, again, there's a lot to take from that. And I think the first thing is, it's a really tricky subject, right? And it's a tricky subject because people will fall all over the spectrum in their opinions, and it will all depend on a vast amount of variables. But for me, I think where I sit, what seems the most logical to me is that I agree that there was a lockdown put in place because there was a potential that the NHS would have been overwhelmed, but also it was an attempt to just try and deter the rate of infection,
Yes.
right? Because even if the NHS could cope, you still don't want the rate of infection to grow catastrophically and stay catastrophically grow. But anyway, that I find is a fine reason for lockdown. I think some of the precautions some of the things that Boris has opened up and in the order that he's opened them, I think are questionable, but maybe we can get onto that in a little bit of time. But I think that on your point about opening things up or doing an event or whatever it is in order to just essentially pay your bills and eat, I think that, you know, there is a middle ground, and that middle ground should be about freedom of choice, right? I think that people should have the autonomous ability to make a decision, and that decision should be, okay, my name is Jake Cross, and I've taken into consideration all the variables around me. I've taken into consideration the understanding that I may be putting myself and others at risk, but because of my necessity to eat and pay my bills and pay my mortgage and everything else, that I need to put an event on, right? And I don't think that really is a problem. And equally, I think that people should have the ability to choose how they act, whether it be to the detriment of others or not is up for debate. But I think that if somebody wanted to go back and train jiu-jitsu, for instance, or wanted to go back and start their MMA training again, or whatever it is, they should be allowed to do that. At least now, you know, where we're in a position where we understand a little bit more about the virus, we understand a little bit more about how it's contracted and how it's spread around, etc., etc. But yeah, I mean, your point about social media backlash is a really important one, I think, because as you know, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, all this sort of stuff is essentially 50% of how your business is actually determined. Unless people turn up to your event and actually see how it is and get a feel for it themselves, it's going to be the online presence that you have that's going to affect who comes through the door, right? And I think that's a really tricky one to manage.
No, I completely agree. Social media has sort of been my best friend sort of last decade of building the events since sort of 2011, 2012 when I started. And I'm thankful for that. I feel like it's connected me to a lot of people that I wouldn't have been able to do in the first place without it. But there is a detriment to it. There is negative on there. And it's not just about my events. It could be anything in the world. I get fed up of Facebook. On a lot of things, and I'm just one of them people where I'm not going to delete it because of it, because that's more of a hindrance on me. I need it more than it needs me. That's the way it is, and a lot of people will feel that in the business sense that they use it. I feel like right now Instagram is a lot more where businesses should start to follow. It doesn't seem as negative. Images tell 1,000 words and all that. I feel like that's where I feel like I lean towards in the future. Having the Facebook groups will always be there, and I've built it over the last 10 years, but I really do feel that social media has its place, but it is hurtful to see some comments sometimes. I've seen people lay into my events without having the full information, and that winds me up more than anything because they don't seem to understand. And that's not just Empire, that's UKFC as well, and maybe they're not liking a certain fight or didn't agree with a decision, and then they just lay into the things that they don't understand. Like, give you an example, we were talking about what fights to put on one year, and they were like, well, first off, you should be hiring new judges or getting new judges in. It's like, the judges are independent to UKFC. We don't bring them in, they are brought into by a completely separate entity. We don't pay the officials. We pay the people that pay. If that makes sense.
Absolutely,
So
yeah.
it's a commission. It's nothing to do with us, and we don't decide. We don't obviously. In promoting, we would want a certain fighter to win over another on some occasion, ticket sales, the right trajectory that we need, that sort of thing. But we are quite down the middle. If a fighter goes against us or goes against a hometown fighter, that's just the way the sport is. We don't want to control that. That's why we love it.
Look, I mean, I think that there's a couple of things here that really grate on me. And the first is that people will comment, and of course, me and probably yourself have been, failure to this at some point in our lives, that we comment on something that we don't actually know about, right? So for instance, the MMA judging, like people, if you think about it a little bit logically, if you as UKFC went out and hired Dave Letherby, Ben Cartledge and somebody else because they're your mates, there's a massive conflict of interest there into how you're now, bringing officials, whether they're the best officials in the UK or not, into your organization. That's just something that can't be done, right? But as you say, you go out to an independent body and you bring in judges, and the judges turn up, whatever their names are, whoever they are, because they've been, they've been judged, pardon the pun, to be of adequate ability to be an MMA judge, and then they sit cage side and then they judge the fight. As you say, you pay the independent body and that's it. And the same with picking fights and rooting for fighters. Like, Jesus, if people get on your back as UKFC, why are they not talking about how they treat Conor McGregor or John Jones or Ronda Rousey or, anyone like that in the UFC? It's not to say storylines are why we watch MMA. Storylines are why we watch grappling. Storylines are why we watch any combat sport. And it's because we either want to see a guy win or we want to see somebody lose. And, that's it, essentially. So, yeah, I couldn't agree with you more that I think that there's a lot of that shit hanging around combat sports. And I think a lot of it as well is because that people, and this is really prevalent actually during the lockdown, people want to be heard, right? And people want to know that they have an opinion and that they're valuable. And I think that is something that comes across a lot over social media is, if you go and look at, I don't know, if you look at any Conor McGregor post, the first 1,000 comments will be about Khabib, or it'll be about him tapping to Khabib, or it'll be about any of the allegations that have come up against him in the past 3 years. And it's like, he's probably not even going to read those,
No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong at all. And just to touch on what you said about Leatherby, Cartledge, and then you didn't think of a third judge, Liam Cannon will be so annoyed with you right there.
Mate, I've given Liam Cann so many fucking shout outs on this podcast. I've spent a good half an hour of podcast time singing that man's praises. Jesus.
I just thought at least I'll give him a shout out because
go on, yeah.
Just to touch on what you said, like Liam and David, I am good friends with them both. I speak to them on a regular basis. So when anyone can get hold of Liam, because he's a pain in the ass to get a hold of, and he knows
he's just so busy.
I know. David, speak to him a lot. He's a fellow promoter as well with role models. Ben, know him, spoke to him, not as familiar as the other two. But yeah, like you say, 3 of the best judges that are in the UK and Europe. And I've had them all at my events. And because they're my friends, I didn't hire them. They're hired because they are how good they are. Mm-hmm. Just like when I get asked to do judging myself or commentary or anything like that, is because of my knowledge and skill set. It's not because I'm friends with someone. Obviously, that may help sometimes, but there's always a time and a place for expertise over friendship, because that's how you grow as a brand.
I mean, look, if there's probably no better example of that than Pantheon, right? So me and Liam have been good friends for a long time, and really good friends. And when it came to me becoming part of Pantheon, me and him had a conversation, and we said that this is a completely separate thing, and that business has nothing to do with friendship, really. And actually, it's worked out really well. And I was also friends with Sam Townend, the other director. But this is something that we're trying to do for jiu-jitsu, and is way bigger than just a friendship.
Yeah.
And that's not to demean the friendship at all. But you're absolutely right. I think that skills-based hiring and making sure that you're in the right place because of you're there under the right merit and not there just because it's your mate is something that's really important. And I think some of the things that you've said in this podcast have really shown. I mean, I notice them because I've been to your events, but I think the way that you are, given that you want to make the best of your events for the athletes, not for yourself, is something that really shines through.
Yeah, I feel like I've been out of the competitive scene. Like a lot of people that do my events that never even knew that I fought or grappled or anything like that. And my last grappling bout was 7 years ago, 2013. My last MMA fight was 2012. And I went through the process of seeing the do's and don'ts of not just competitors, but also the promoting side. And I've said this a few times to a few different people, I think on my own podcast as well, that when I was around 15, my nana owned, through my life, my nana has owned pubs throughout Manchester, and I've always been around.
Big up Nana Cross.
Say again?
Big up Nana Cross every time.
So I was always around that setting and pot collected and stuff like that, and then I played pool, and I've always been pretty decent at it. But at that point when I was 15, I had a few mates around that age, and we'd go in during the day and help my nana a little bit, and we'll play some pool. And then we just thought, we'll start trying to do the teams. Then I became the captain of both the Monday and Thursday team, sorting that side out. And the average age of our team was 15, and we were playing that average age of like 50-odd-year-old men, and we were beating them. We beat the 6-time league champions. This is how funny, how it shows about like politics, not just in jiu-jitsu, but the team was called the Home Guard. They're in Failsford in Manchester. The Home Guard, 6-time league champions. We beat them 4-3, close match, but we beat them. We went back 6 weeks later to play their B team. But they won't let anyone under the age of 18 in the door that time because we beat the 18.
No way.
It was horrible, mate. That just shows politics full stop. That's sort of when I fell out the love of it because of politics and that sort of thing that it brought with it. But I was always good at organising. I competed a lot. I've been invited to events, and a light switch came on. I was like, I can do this. Why not? Let's just do an event. I was at a gym fighting fit in Manchester, which is where Owen was from that fought Sam. That was my longest time in a gym where I fought and competed. I created Sub North. That was April 1st, 2012.
Jesus Christ, that's going back a bit, isn't it?
I know. So it was literally 21 days after my last MMA fight. So it was all in that transition of the reasons why I wanted to stop competing myself, because I knew I was going to be better at doing this. And like I said to you pre-recording, I was never the best. I just enjoyed doing it. And I think that's what a lot of people seem to forget. You don't have to be the best. Just enjoy it. If it creates new friends, which we know this sport does, MMA and jiu-jitsu, creates a new social setting, mentally helps you, physically helps you. That's the number one priority. That's why this sport should be around and continue to grow. But yeah, Sub North won April 1st, 2012. I had 35 grapplers. And then obviously the Leeds one in January had over 700. And that's the transition of building and growing and making sure I was doing the right things at the right point. I will always say, after every event, I kick myself. I did this wrong, did that. And Mrs. has a go with me because I'm like, I go in a little downturn because I should have done this. But it's just because I'm a perfectionist. I want to do the better for the competitor.
Absolutely. And I think that's something where we touch on, we connect quite importantly. And I remember the first conversation I had with Liam and Sam about Pantheon. We went and we had some breakfast together, and we were all just on the same page essentially. Sam essentially said, like, you and myself and Liam do the jiu-jitsu stuff, he'll do the event stuff, but let's make sure it's all centered around being the best for the athletes. And I think if anyone has been to an Empire event, if anyone's been to a competition, right, and you realize all the horror stories of a competition, the horror stories in that you turn up and you don't know where the registration table is. You turn up at the registration table, they don't have your name. You turn up and your weigh-in has been delayed by 3 hours. You then turn up to the weigh-in, you weigh in, and then you find out your bracket's been pushed 3 hours. So you turn up at 9 a.m., you're competing at 6 a.m. It's nothing like that at Empire. The two Empires that I've been to, bearing in mind I live in London, so, I generally just...
There's a bit of a difference.
Yeah, a slightly bit of a difference. But the two Empires I've been to, everything's signposted. You get to the registration table. You can weigh in there and then. You're given your wristband. You turn up. The mats are segregated away from the audience. There's none of that bullshit where it's like you're in a bullpen and the crowd is literally on top of you. You can't even find your own mat. You can't get to the table. Every official is understanding of what mat is where, what time is on what, who's supposed to be where. everyone's got, a designated warm-up area. The rules meeting is done officially. It's done professionally. And the 2 times that I've been there, the athletes have been of a good quality. There's no like shit talking between, I mean, there's a little bit of shit talking, but what I mean is like nobody's crowded around a table, like giving you shit. You're allowed one corner person and that's it. And it's so much better, in my opinion. It's so much cleaner. It's so much more aesthetically pleasing. It's so much less pressure for the athletes, right? Like when one of the Pantheon, sorry, not the Pantheon, the Empire, for just before Liam's Polaris debut, we went to go and corner Steve and some of the scramble guys. It was me and Liam inside the matted area, just coaching Steve, and he came off the mat. We had a chat. We went back round. We waited for his next match. We came back on, and it was just so logically pleasing. And you could see that. Of course, Steve was nervous for his matches. Of course, you're going to be nervous, but he wasn't like, fuck me, like, please, can you excuse me? I can't get to my mat. Can you, where's my bag? Where's this? Where's that? Like, none of that shit exists. It's just turn up, go to your mat, have a roll, hopefully win, and then go home again. Like, it's just, I can't commend you enough for that. Really. I really can't. It's phenomenal.
I appreciate that. Like I said about the first one with 35 competitors at Sub North back in April 2012, it was only 2 mats then. Most of it was just beginners, so it was only white belts. It was basically fighting fit against stealth with a few extra people from Blackpool or wherever. So it was quite an intimate sort of thing. Everyone was learning that day. Competitions weren't really a thing. You had sort of Jason Tan's ground control. The British Open was a thing back then, and the London Open, but there wasn't really that much. And there was definitely not really an avenue or a market to open into. There was definitely a market, but it wasn't like people running at the bits. People were very hesitant about putting on events or more than an interclub because they thought it was too much hard work. And
sure,
I never want to feel like, I want to feel like I'm the leader of it because that's what I want to be, the best in what I do. But I know for a fact that my events made other events pick up what they were doing and be better. And that's one thing I pride myself on because there was a lot of things wrong with events previously. And I think since then, more events, it's watered down a little bit now with certain events. Certain events shouldn't be running. I won't be naming names.
Go on.
No, I'm not going
no,
to.
it's fine. It's fine.
Only because of the feedback that I get from, like a bit like what you said, how well Empire is running. And that's because, not just because of me, my whole team around it, and the spectators and the competitors, everyone knows their place because things are put in place. My staff are the best around, and I will always say that. And Liam Cannon, some of his guys at Scramble have been a part of that, which I'm humble to have them guys even try and help me. But my point is that I decided, right, I'm going to do this when I moved from Sub North to Grapple Nation in 2014 with an old business partner, and that was sort of the next level up, and everyone was like, wow, these are what events should be in the North. There was nothing really like it in the North. Ground control had gone away around 2010, 2011 at that point, so there was nothing for a long time. And then other events were like, oh, we need to pick up now, or other events were created to sort of mimic what other people were starting to get better at. And I'm happy that's happened because people are spoiled. If you've started training the last 2 to 3 years, maybe even 5 years, you feel like the Empire is the norm. This is what events should be. They're not. It's been so much hard work getting it to this point. And if you competed 10 years ago or 11 years ago like me, wow, the difference is phenomenal. And I love that I've helped that, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. One of the pioneers, right? One of the pioneers of modern eventing and and like, have you heard of Robert Deagle? Yeah. So brown belt out of Hodger Gracie NYC with John Danaher. And, when I was talking to him, just, we're, relatively good friends. And one of the things he was saying is like, New York's got an amazing scene, but it's got an amazing scene a lot of the time because of the coaches that are there. Unity and RGA and these kind of places. Like, they're going to breed amazing grapplers. But he was like, the competition scene in the UK, across the North and London and whatever, is just so vastly different and vastly superior to other places. And I think we're very privileged in that, I've never gone and competed in another country. I've never gone and competed anywhere else other than the UK. But yeah, I mean, I think the scene that we have here is is pretty good. There's frequent events. The events are held to generally a high standard, or high in comparison to what you're saying just before. I mean, look, don't get me wrong. The things that I just said about things that are bad from competitions, my last competition before lockdown was exactly like that. Right, I turned up at 9 because my weigh-in was like 11 or something, but one of my guys was competing before, so I wanted to be there to support. I didn't end up competing until 5:45 p.m. And like at that point, I didn't give a fuck. I just wanted to go home, you know? Like there was nowhere to sit, there was nowhere to rest. You couldn't really go out and come back in because it was just so busy, and it was just a bit of a nightmare, right? So I think the competition scene and the event scene is obviously growing, right? And as you say, a high tide rises all ships, and if it's people like you that are pushing that high tide, then competitions are only going to get better, right?
Definitely. You made a good point. Obviously, I don't know what event that was, but there was a similar situation where I think it was Naga in Amsterdam. I think it was like 2.5, 3 years ago. One of my sort of head referees, head staff, Lee Herbert, it was the same day as an Empire. He already had Naga booked. It was just one of them things. He went out there, and I don't think he competed like 11:15 at night, or 11 o'clock at night. Yeah. And his flight was like 1 a.m. or something daft like that. And it was like, that just makes him appreciate Empire even more, because he sees how well it's run. And that shocked me a little bit, because I always thought Naga or ADCC or anything like that would be like what I do, but 10 times better. And I think mine's run quite well. Like you say, I think I can always improve, but it's down to a nice tee. I think rolls quite smoothly within reason. But I feel like because the amount of money they bring in and their fame and stuff like that, that it would be even tighter than mine. The fact that you would even contemplate going on at 11 p.m. at night, like, I get annoyed if it goes to 6 p.m. because I had it finished at 5:30. I think Lee was supposed to run at 3 o'clock. It went on at 11. And it's supposed to finish at 6. It's like, where's that gone wrong? And you would think you would have things in place. Like, I've seen a lot of people in the past that go to technology, like Smooth Comp and stuff like that. And at the beginning, that didn't work at all. And no one had a backup. Whereas in my backup is pen and paper. You can't go wrong with pen and paper. Make sure it's there. Make sure it's printed out. Don't just use screens. I literally have them fold sort of scoreboards like you do at ping pong or whatever, ready, that if we had a power cut, I could still work. That's what you need, and you should always have things ready just in case. I've not had to go to that degree yet, but I'll always be prepared to make it as basic as possible just to get the day done. You don't want to be waiting 6-7 hours. You don't want to come to an event and say last minute it's been cancelled, we've had a power cut or whatever. You want to make sure that the day can go ahead within reason.
Absolutely. And I mean, to be fair, like I've competed at Naga a few times, and my experience of Naga has always been pretty good, to be honest. Like, the thing I like about Naga is the day before weigh-ins. Like, that's good because, because guys are flying in from all over all over Europe and whatever. If they want to weigh in the day before, they can do. I like that. I think that's quite a nice addition. And then generally, the competitions that I've been to for Naga have been pretty good. But yeah, I mean, that's just my experience. I wanted to touch a little bit to go back a little bit. You were saying about MMA and jiu-jitsu, and you haven't competed in about 8 years, 7 years. Why is that? Why did you stop competing, other than because you wanted to start these other ventures?
Well, the reason I started competing was because, I started training in April 2009, just after my 19th birthday. Just found it randomly, had a week off work. I wanted to train when I was 17, but I worked in Bury, which is about an hour and a half bus ride from where I lived at the time. So I never really thought, because I'll get home at 11 o'clock at night and I'm leaving again at 6. It just didn't make any sense for a 17-year-old who didn't drive. So when I turned 19, I lived in Manchester more or less. I worked in Manchester, and then I found a gym in Manchester, SBG, under Carl Tanswell. Decided to do
gym.
That. Yeah, the stars that have come out there is unreal, and it sort of set the path up to where most gyms are now. It's sort of splintered out, and you've got great coaches from that. Like white and blue belts when I started training are legit black belts now. Matt Inman, Coltrane, Martin Cahill was one of my old coaches. They were a bit higher level than a blue belt, but Liam Wonder, Sandeep Manik, the level of them going out there and splintered it is crazy. But in relation to me competing, I competed because I loved it and I enjoyed it. And I think my first year, I competed like 10 times. I just wanted to get out there. Then the year later, it sort of transitioned into competing just as much, but it was like half amateur MMA, meaning amateur C rules, so there's no headshots. That was how different it was back then. And jiu-jitsu, and I love doing that. And then I had a few niggling injuries. I tore a rotator cuff in one of my early events, stuff like that. And then I got to a point in MMA where I never really got the fire for it. I just did it because I enjoyed it. I was never nervous. I turned up to a weigh-ins, and my opponent, like I said, I think it's pre-recorded now, that missed weight by 7 pounds. I wasn't fussed. I trained 10 weeks for it. I just thought, yeah, whatever, let's fight. He had already been beaten by a previous training partner by submission about 8 weeks before. And at that time, I was slightly better than that guy at jiu-jitsu. So I thought, I can take him down. I can submit him. I was never good at striking. This was my first sort of headshot bout. So I was like, fine. Got there. You've said you've watched the video. He was ripped like shreds. Like, he had so much strength on him.
First round, a big man.
Yeah. I'll tell you a funny story after this anyway. But second round, I think it was second anyway, took the guy down finally after trying for so. I was shooting for takedowns from like 5 miles away. That's how much I didn't want to be hit by this guy, because he hit hard. And I sort of lost track of what I wanted to game plan, because my kicks were good. I had range. I had a lot more range on him, hands and kicks wise. So I thought I'll keep him at bay, shooting from miles away. I finally took him down in the second round, and he pushed me off like I was a fly. And my head just went west. I was like, I don't know what to do. Can't take him down, blah, blah, blah. So I thought, right, third round, I'm just going to go for it. One takedown. And he hit me with like a uppercut hook. And my head was like it was in a fish tank. Referee stopped it. And I remember looking up at the ref like a second later going, thank God you stopped that. I had no idea where I was. And I was humble enough just to go, yeah, one of them. I had like 30, 40 people in the crowd from that bought tickets from me. And I was like, just one of them. I wasn't bothered that I lost. I just was like, I can eat pizza now. I'm happy. And from there, Sub North was 3 weeks later. I got that underway, and I was like, I prefer promoting. I did a few jiu-jitsu comps after that, but I found, and this is funny enough, that other events I would be signed up for them, and then something would go wrong with a referee or whatever, and I would get drafted in last minute to either be a ref or help them organise a little bit. And I was like, yeah, that's cool, but I can't compete as well, because they're like, oh, we'll let you compete now for free. We'll give you a T-shirt. It's like, I'm not bothered about that. I just can't compete and help. My brain doesn't work like that. And then that's when I decided I would rather promote full-time, especially in the jiu-jitsu side. But I enjoyed it. I always say I will compete again at some point. I've got a lot of weight to lose. I used to walk around at like 60 kilograms. I'm probably like 87 right now. But I don't train as much or anywhere near as much. I probably train jiu-jitsu twice a year now, if that.
Twice a year?
Yeah, I don't. I as of last year, my excuse, and it probably was true, I don't have time. This year, I've got more time. I don't have an excuse. I was starting to train in a normal gym 5 or 6 days a week, getting the momentum up, had more time. And I was, I think about 2 weeks before lockdown, I trained jiu-jitsu like twice. So that was my quota for the year. But that was because I didn't see lockdown coming. I had more time on my hands, and I definitely felt the difference. I was probably getting more by white belts. I didn't know what level they were at Nogi. But I was like, yeah, screw it. I've never trained really with my hair like this or my beard.
Of course.
Experience. So I think if I went back to training, I think this would be completely gone again, because it's a pain getting this under someone, or someone getting a rear naked choke. You tap because of the beard, not because of the choke. Yeah. And don't let anyone tell you any different. But yeah, probably will compete again one day. I've always joked that I'll have a pro fight just to come full circle. I likely won't. I think the more joke of that is because I said I would walk out to Barbie Girl just for the fun of it.
I mean, do you not miss jiu-jitsu? Do you not miss training?
I get a lot of it from what I do. So last year
Sure.
I ran 10 events.
Yeah.
So it was, what did I do? I did 5 Empires. I did a team series and 4 UKFCs. And that was a full-time 9-to-5 job. So I was burnt out by the end of that year. I was lucky enough to buy a house last year, and how hard this day and age it is to even do that. So once I was on the ladder and I didn't really have to worry about applying for a mortgage and proving what income I had, I handed my notice as soon as I could. Within a month, I was like, I'm done. I don't want to be under anyone. It's hard when I was a boss of myself in 2 different organizations. It's hard to do a 9-to-5 and someone to be over you when I know I can do things better. I know how my business is doing, and it's a bit of an ego in that way, and I try not to use that. But I know that I could do a better job than some people in the business that I was working. I worked in a solicitor's for 13 years, and it wasn't about the legal side. It was about how they ran the business. It was how they treated the staff, how they dealt with feedback and customers and stuff like that, and referrals. And it just felt like everything was in the wrong place. Like they were more bothered about the referrers than the clients. And I've never been like that. Clients are your number one. That's how the business runs. And I used to argue with my managers about that, and they didn't see where I was coming from. But because I knew I was right, I didn't stop. And I was glad that I got the chance to walk away and be better in who I am. I'm a lot happier than now. Even though lockdown's quite an oppressive thing, you feel like everything's sort of over you. I'm the happiest I've been in probably 5 or 6 years.
And do you think that lockdowns offered you a chance to improve Empire and improve UKFC at all, even though you haven't been able to put on events?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm a bit of a geek. Obviously I've seen yours.
My man.
And I don't mean that in a negative way. I think you know exactly what I mean.
Absolutely, I'm exactly the same.
So obviously, people looking at us now can't really see the setup. You posted yours on Instagram. I've got a similar setup to you. I've got 2 screens. I've got a TV to watch my MMA or jiu-jitsu. I've got a mic like you, good camera. It's just, I like this setup too. It just makes me work better. So I've had this for years. I sort of mimicked it in my 9 to 5 job, so it's just a smooth transition.
Yep.
So I found over the last few months, started a podcast just like you. That was because I like doing these sort of things. I had to find a way to interview my fighters for my events a lot easier rather than me traveling and stuff like that, because the time to travel and set up and pay for venues and mics and editing and stuff like that, when this platform on Zoom or whatever you use is easier. We could have unlimited amount of people in here now, a conference, face-to-face, anything like that. So that's one thing I've definitely grown in. I've created my own little, this is going to take me a week, 10 I've only started this, where I've got my own roster for UKFC fighters. So over the 13 events I've got the notes here, 418 fighters, not different, just people that fought on the shows.
Unique fighters.
Like over 200 bouts. It's ridiculous. 262 unique people. So different people have fought, like Sam and Owen, that was their first time, but people that fought multiple times. We've had the girl that opened up UKFC 1, you probably know her name by now, but Karolina Wolczyk. She's Polish. She lost her debut in UKFC 1. That was her first opening bout. She's now world champion for EFC in Africa. And that's what I want to do. So I've started to more recognize that, and I want to put that out there more. So I'm creating loads of different graphics and stuff to put out for the end of the year. So I have got, even though I've got more time because I'm not working my 9 to 5, the more time that I've created, because I can't technically go as much as I want. I do that as much as I can. With Empire, I'll speak to you off air about what I'm doing because I can't announce it.
My man.
I'll gladly come back on if you want me to discuss it afterwards.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
But that'll be next week. And like I say, if people listen to this, I want people to understand when I do announce it that, yeah, I probably will get a bit of backlash because of what I want to do. But other people have done more. There's no real difference of what I'm doing to what they're doing. People will pick it apart and stuff like that. But I'll be very, very safe in what I do. And I will make a loss on this event. I no doubt about it. I will not be able to make any income. I won't be charging pay-per-view for it. It'll all be on a platform that people can watch for free, because I want Empire to survive as a brand. I want people still to recognize it. And I want people to still be able to at least compete or enjoy watching competing. And hopefully that's what people will understand when I do announce what I will announce next week. And I'm sorry, this is not in a week's time.
That's absolutely fine. That's absolutely fine.
But yeah, the more time has definitely helped. I enjoyed it. I've been able to kit out my office with stuff that I've had in storage. I bought that off charity earlier in the year. I've had these done. I'm trying to move my finger. These are now, for the last year and this year, are the team trophies now.
Beautiful.
And I've got this one as well. This version.
Very nice. Very nice.
So that helps. The Grapple Nation belt, which I said pre-recording, the only 3 people in the world have this: Dan Strauss, Ross Nichols, and myself. And then I got a replica UFC belt because this is what got me into loving what I do.
Jesus. I mean, yeah, that's, I think that's something that I find has been really prevalent during the lockdown. Is there's people that have taken advantage of the time, and there's people that haven't, right? and I wanted to get into your podcast a little bit later, but let's talk about it now. Like, the reason for this podcast, if anyone hasn't gone and listened, then I did an episode just by myself. I think it's episode 3. I think episode 3 or episode 4, where essentially it was just me, and I explained my reasons for starting the podcast. And the reasons for starting the podcast is, I think I enjoy interesting conversation, I enjoy open dialogue, and I enjoy interesting people, and I want to try and bring that to.
Why have you got me on then? I'm not interested.
Oh, shut your fucking mouth. Like, I enjoy conversations with good people. And I think that long form conversation, I mean, this podcast has been running for about 40 minutes now, but, you know, a long form conversation, especially between men, is something that doesn't happen a lot. And I think that that's something that I want to try and promote as much as possible. So yeah, but on the topic of your podcast, like, why did you start the podcast? What's the reason behind it? And give that a plug.
So the podcast that I do now is called The Life and Fight of a Podcast. The pauses needs to be there because it's literally said like 3 times. So we'll take a step back a little bit. I created a podcast about 2-3 years ago called The State and the Empire podcast. So The State is my fighting nickname that was given by my cousin back in the day, because you don't give yourself your own nickname, and that sort of stuck. And it's just seemed to work. And I did it sort of on the phone, recording the audio before Zoom even existed, edited on a little, whatever the editing thing was back then. I can't remember what it was. I think Audio Summit or whatever. And then I didn't have the time, just events, work, etc. That died out. And then been on a few podcasts over the years like this. And then my friend Simon Price, who's literally my oldest friend in this business, he's a brown belt now. He has his own gym at Hive, BJ in South Manchester. He's part of ASW and Kamatakuru. The knowledge that kid's got is crazy. He wanted to do a podcast with me where we sort of use our strengths together, and we've been friends for years. So back to when we started training, he started training at SBG 3 weeks before me. And then we were sort of queuing up, waiting to go onto the mat after the beginner session or the advanced session or whatever it was that was on before us. And we just started chatting about why we got into it and stuff and what we wanted to do. And then a few months in, he was like, "Yeah, I want my own gym when I've started training a long time, and I want to be a PT and I want to teach jiu-jitsu." And I'm like, "Oh, that's cool. You know, what do you want to do?" And I said, "Yeah, I won't mind doing something like I won't mind my own gym, but more I want to promote events." And this was well before I even thought about it formally. Just I'm good at organising, that sort of thing. And it's funny, obviously it was less than 10 years later, but 10 years later, we're doing exactly that. He's now looking for bigger areas to do his gym, because he's outgrowing his gym, which is amazing. And he just wanted to do something with me where we can use our strengths. And I was just sat there thinking of names, and I was thinking, well, we didn't want it at first to be just jiu-jitsu and MMA orientated. We wanted it to be about life and stuff like that. And I literally just thought I wanted to be a bit of a laugh in it. And that's where life and fight came in, because if you just dumb it down, it just says laugh, even though it's not spelt right, obviously. And it's not like we have comedy people, and it's just that, just enjoy conversation. But because of my strengths in the jiu-jitsu community and the MMA community, like literally 3 or 4 hours ago, we were interviewing Jack Shaw, who's fighting the
amazing
next week. And it's weird. There's some people I interview or I speak to where I go, wow, I'm a fan of them. But then with Jack this morning, I'm a massive fan of him, and I've followed his career for the last 5 or 6 years. He was on our level so much. He's such a clever guy, and it's going to go out tomorrow, the podcast. I enjoy doing stuff like that, and even with something like you, it's just a knowledge and a proper conversation. It doesn't feel like an interview. You can ask a question that can go on a tangent for 2 or 3 hours, and then you go, where were we? And that's what I enjoy.
Absolutely. And I think that's really important, really, really important. And shout out to Jack Shaw as well. Best of skill for the weekend. I mean, I think that kid is the truth. I tell you, if anyone hasn't gone and seen his Cage Warriors bouts, go back, watch those bouts. You can catch them on UFC Fight Pass, or I'm sure you can find them on some other sites that I will not mention. But, you know, like, that kid is the truth. And you're absolutely right. You know, like I interviewed Rob Drysdale. We had a conversation with Rob Drysdale. Nice. Like, Robert fucking Drysdale, ADCC winner. What the fuck? Just chatting to me.
Tweet or post the should he have stopped the fight?
Oh, this was post. It's yeah,
Oh, right, okay.
yeah. I mean, let's give me your opinion on that. What's your thoughts on that controversy? For anyone that hasn't seen it, let me just give some context. So Max Rushkov, one of Robert's fighters, he went in the UFC and he had a bout against Austin Hubbard. And the first round was pretty competitive. Max showed off some really nice jiu-jitsu, some really nice grappling. Austin negated a lot of that grappling and you know, got out of a lot of the heel hook attempts and all the various things that Max was trying. In the second round, that was arguably a 10-8 round. Austin put the pace on Max, and Max seemed to not have any answers for the striking that Austin had. At the end of the round, Max asked repeatedly Robert to call the fight. Robert attempted to G Max up and give him some confidence and give him some motivation. And at the end of the fight, the end of the 1 minute segment, the referee came in, the commissioner came in and asked Max whether he wanted to continue, and the fight was called off. But go on, what are your thoughts?
I see, and especially with a lot of things in the position I'm in, I see it as a grappler, a fighter, a promoter. Every single angle I try and look at things in. And with this, the added context of this, I'm sure he took the fight on 5 or 6 days' notice. Now, we've just seen Masvidal take it on 6-7 days' notice to get for the world title fight this weekend, which I'm sure we'll touch on shortly, knowing you. The taking a short notice fight is not uncommon, but taking a short notice fight in these circumstances, in lockdown, when people are not really training, you need to step back and think, right, okay, Drysdale knows his fighter, says he's the next big thing, which he could be. Everyone loses, especially in MMA. Wow. The amount of people that have losses in MMA, there's no real undefeated fighter within reason that's fought the who's who. There's 1 or 2 people, John Jones, Cejudo's lost, but that sort of context. In relation to this, once he got to the 3rd time of saying call it, I think that's when it became a bit cringy. I completely understand Robert's point of view in relation to, no kid, come on, you've got it, because sometimes you just need that, yeah, of course I can fucking do this, let's just do it. But he was sat down, his head was forward, he didn't want to know, he knew he was getting destroyed, he had nothing left. And sometimes when you're physically and mentally broken, you don't want a part of it. The Anthony Smith thing a few weeks before, when he was getting battered compared to what Max was. Yeah, I was going to say Austin, but that's his point. I think once he got to the 3rd point, fine, call it. He should have called it. I see Robert's point of view in relation to trying to G up his fighter and get him ready. But this is where, shout out to Liam Khan again, this is where stuff that Liam does correctly. He watches over the fighters as the commission at Bellator and make sure he listens to things. And that's one of what the commission did. It wasn't the referee. It wasn't his cornerman. It was Max saying it repeatedly to where the commission said, you don't want any part of this. You want out, don't you? And he's like, yeah. And it's like, right, fight's done. That's all it needed. And that's where commissioners should be in the cage or at least around the cage to listen and understand what's going on. One, to stop cheating and Vaseline. And that's the main thing, really. Make sure not too many people are in the corner, because once you have a cut man, that means you get one less corner in the cage. That's where it should come full circle. And that's a professional event. So I do see both sides. But after the 3rd or 4th, I want out. It should have been called.
So to me, I mean, look, to me, I don't think Robert did anything wrong, and I'll explain why I think that. So, as we say, so let's throw some of the variables in. As you say, Max took the fight on 4, 5, 6 days' notice. It came out afterwards that he had quite a severe foot injury. We know that it was in lockdown, so he wasn't training. We know that it's his UFC debut. Prior to that fight, he'd had 5 professional fights. All of them 1st round finishes, bar 1, which was a 2nd round finish. The kid's young. He's like 24, 25, right? And as we said, Rob knows this guy. This guy's lived with Rob for a year, 2 years, whatever it is. We get to the end of the 2nd round. Okay, it was close to a 10-8, right? I'd be happy with a 10-8 round being scored in that round. He wasn't looking good. He looked tired, but as we know, one takedown could have changed the whole thing, right? And it's not like Max wasn't able to take Austin down, because he did it successfully in the 1st round. So I understand Rob's thought process of, one, just take him down and hold him there for a while. Like, get your energy back and hold him there. Fine. Now, I agree. After Max had said 3, 4, 5 times, call it, there wasn't any other outcome that should happen. But what happened at the end was correct. The commissioner came in and he asked Max, do you want to continue? And Rob said he does not want to continue, as well as Max saying, I don't want to continue. So Rob himself conceded at the right time. If Rob had gone, the commissioner would come in and Rob's like, no, he's fine to fight. We can say that that's egregious, because it is. The kid didn't want to compete. He shouldn't compete. Fine. But when the time was right and somebody entered the bubble that was Max and Rob at that time, Rob conceded. He told the truth. He did the right thing. He said, the kid doesn't want to fight. Call it.
Yeah, I think Chael Sonnen said this a couple of times. If it would have gone into the third round, that's when a lot of people would have been like, whoa, what the hell's going on here? The fact that he didn't, it's a lot of him using that full minute to try and G up his fighter as much as possible.
Exactly.
I do completely understand Robert's point of view. The only thing, as a promoter, I wouldn't want to see that. I wouldn't want...
Of course.
Once someone says they're out, they're out. But as a former coach and I used to corner and stuff like that with a few of my teammates and stuff, I would like to take what they want into consideration, because they're in there, they're getting punched, they're getting hit, they're getting mauled it like he did in that second round, and he didn't feel like he could win. He didn't think he had anything left. And
of course,
enough to where at the end of the second round it was called, and I'm hoping Max learns from that, because like Robert said previously, and I've seen stuff that he said just on Max, he says he could be the next big thing, and sometimes you just need to learn from this. It's a big stage stepping up, and especially on short notice, and the level of guys that he's probably fighting outside the UFC are probably nowhere near like
Austin Hubbard. Exactly.
Some of them can be, and you're probably fortunate or unfortunate enough to compete against the best earlier on, when you should be technically fighting the best in the UFC. But I feel like he'll be back. You'll probably see a different side. It'll be a conversation on commentary for a few of his fights, or maybe after the first one it'll be gone if he pulls out a performance. If he does it again, then it's definitely not for him. Like if he quits on the stool, if that makes that sound like he's a coward. He's not. But if he on the stool again and it happens, then this isn't cut out for him, and that's just the way it is. But I don't see that happening again.
Me too. I mean, look, as all the variables that we've already mentioned, the kid's young. This is his UFC debut. Massive stage. Massive. And, you know, he came up against a guy. Austin Hubbard's no joke for your debut. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's no joke. And especially not for jiu-jitsu, predominantly a jiu-jitsu competitor. You know, that guy's gone against Davi Ramos. He's gone against Cesar Ferreira and didn't get subbed. Went all 3 rounds, right? So, you know, it's no joke. No joke. And look, I agree. I think Max will be back. I think that a lot of fighters say that their first loss is something that changed their entire career and changed the way they are. And I couldn't agree more. And let's pivot now on short notice fights. Let's pivot to Jorge and Usman. Like, Jesus, what a crazy turn of events, right? So Usman comes off that amazing win against Colby Covington, takes a bit of a break, as he should. That was a war. He then is scheduled to fight Gilbert Burns in Yas Island, 251. Gilbert Burns gets popped, essentially, for coronavirus. Popped. Yeah, gets popped by coronavirus. Yeah. I hope that Gilbert Burns is okay and that he recovers soon. But then Gamebred, the one and only, comes full circle.
It's definitely full circle. I agree with that. It should have been the fight that was made anyway. I think this happened on a few occasions where they've talked about money, they brought someone in and they've had to bring that guy back in because something's happened. And I get there's no crowd, and I get that it's going to cost them a lot more money to do these events, but Masvidal is money right now. He's what he's done to Till, Askren, Diaz, the way he's come. He's a vet. He's been around a long time. His persona is magnetic, and you want to listen to him just like you want to listen to a lot of fighters like Chael and stuff like that. He's not a bad guy. He just speaks to how it is. He's not a dick about it. He is who he is. And this against Usman, this rival there, this heat. I'm so happy it's happening, and I'm 90% sure that there'll be a rematch clause in this because Usman won't be defeated on short notice, and Masvidal stepping on short notice will want a rematch clause on a full fight camp. But yeah, what do you think about it?
So I'm just upset that we didn't get a full camp, to be honest. Because look, I think that Masvidal is somebody that's both underrated and overrated, to be honest.
Wow.
And I think he's underrated because you don't go 3 rounds with Damian Maia and have him on your back for 3 rounds and not get subbed if you're not a good fighter, right? You don't go and you don't compete against essentially everyone there is to compete against in your weight class, in 2 weight classes, and come out with a positive record if you're not a really good fighter. You don't take a short notice fight at 19 to fight in some guy's back garden bare knuckle against one of Kimbo Slice's friends if you're not a mad bastard, right? And I think Jorge has definitely paid his dues. He's going to be the first fighter, he's going to be the fighter that's had the most amount of fights before a title shot, a UFC title shot. This is going to be his 45th professional fight when he steps in there.
I'm confused by that stat. I seen that the other day, and I don't get how it's worded because I'm sure Overeem had more.
Yes, probably.
And plus,
yes,
I think this person that's created this stat has not said it's about a UFC title shot. I think it's about a world title shot. But he fought Gilbert Melendez in 2011 in Strikeforce.
In Strikeforce,
so
exactly.
Where he came from, and I've seen the thing that you've seen.
Yeah.
Overeem's had more, and I do like. Yeah, and I feel bad that I'm correcting you in a way because
no, not at all.
The nicest way possible. There's a lot of people I see stats from that have not been watching it as long as say me or you, and when you sometimes just go. The first thing was Alistair Overeem, the second thing was he fought Melendez. Yeah. And even I've seen a few of my friends that I know in the community that live Melendez, Overeem, and I just thought they're on the same wavelength as me. But even if he's not the first, he's definitely one of the few. He's been 9 years since the title shot. It's been so many fights since the title shot. He's had up and downs. He's fought at lightweight. He's fought at welterweight. He's fought in between. He fought Paul Daly at welterweight and lost just after the Melendez fight. Yeah. He's fought the who's who.
He has.
And why it's taken so long? Because he's not scared to fight anyone.
Exactly. And I think where there's a little bit of like being overrated, quote unquote, is the last 3 fights. Obviously, he absolutely destroys Ben Askren. He goes in and Darren Till fell in love with that left hand a little bit and didn't respect Jorge a little bit. And then he paid the price for that in London. And then he goes and absolutely demolishes Nate Diaz's face. And again, we know the problems with Nate Diaz's scar tissue. We know that the wind could open up a cut on Nate Diaz's face at this point, And I think that because of those highlight reel fights, people are expecting him to just blow Kamaru Usman out of the water. And I just don't think that's going to happen. Kamaru Usman made Tyron Woodley look like he'd never wrestled before. And okay, that's, it was a bad night for Tyron, but it was a phenomenal performance. And in Usman's UFC tenure, we see that he has fixed his cardio problems. His striking has got a lot better under Henry Hooft. His wrestling pedigree is obviously phenomenal. And he seems like he's an all-round fighter. That Colby Covington fight was an absolute war. I was really impressed. And the reason why I'm really sad that this isn't a full camp is because Usman can put a pace on, and so can Jorge. But I just wonder if Jorge can put a pace on at Jorge's pace for 5 rounds if he's coming off the sofa.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember it. I'm sure it's the fight that I'm thinking of, but Nate versus Ben Henderson. That's Ben Henderson's athletic prowess was sort of the thing that sort of separated them a little bit. And Diaz was always in the fight, and there's that infamous thing where he puts a finger up in the middle of the fight. And I feel like that's one way it can go where Usman's wrestling and athletic prowess can overpower him, and you might see Masvidal on his back a lot, striking, elbow, just being active. Or if Masvidal gets what he wants in the first round, it's either a quick finish or a 5-round dogfight. Now, if Masvidal can pull Usman into a 5-round dogfight, I think
it's Masvidal's to lose.
Yeah, Usman should start going down because of the damage. A bit like Diaz, where the referee stepped in, it can easily go like that. I'm leaning towards it's going to be a dogfight, but I don't think it'll be like that every round. I can see the first fight, them being wary of each other, maybe Masvidal stepping up a gear, second round more of a wrestling, and then it turns to a dogfight. And then I think Usman might try and keep him against the cage, take him down.
Course, yeah.
And that's what I think. I think Usman might get this by decision, but I think if on a full camp, even though I really like Usman, I think Masvidal finishes him.
Interesting. I mean, the thing that we've never seen with, I mean, so obviously Tyron Woodley's got crazy power, right? But we've not seen, not that I can remember, Usman against somebody that has quite the boxing caliber that Jorge does, right? And, you know, when Donald Cerrone signed to fight Jorge, everyone was like, oh, Jesus, it's a southpaw boxer. Donald's going to get fucked up. And that's what we saw, right? Like, I think you're right. If Jorge can drag Usman into a firefight, and if Jorge can hurt Usman early and force him to think, oh shit, like this is not where I want to be. I don't want to
Like what
stand with
Burns
this
did to
guy.
Woodley early.
Exactly. If that can happen, man, we're in for an exciting fight. Because I'm not sure we've seen Usman really rocked, really cracked, really hurt before. And Jorge can absolutely do that. But then in the same vein, Usman's tactic has to be get him against the fence, wear him down, tire him out defending takedowns, and then try and finish him late. Or just try and drag him so deep into the water that he's exhausted, right? And obviously Jorge's going to know that. But what a fight. What a fight.
People seem to be using the short notice thing as like he's got no chance, but Bisping
course,
took
it's
less
huge
than 2
chance.
weeks. Bisping finished Rockhold on less than 2 weeks' notice and said that actually helped him because his body hadn't gone through the rigmarole and injuries and stuff like that of a fight camp. And yeah, Masvidal probably hasn't trained. He probably thought something can happen in this fight, or they'll come calling a month later, especially with the quick turnarounds at the minute. It'd be a bit like, do you remember, I think it was about 6 months ago when you had Yin Genchek and Zhali Wang. I always get him named the wrong way around. But the co-main event had us that overwhelmed. By the time you got to the main event with, was it Romero and Adesanya, you was like, I'm hoping that it goes first title fight, second title fight, and you get to that main event and everyone's on such high, and then that delivers still, because that could be then the ultimate UFC in history.
Absolutely. I mean, you've touched on the co-main event and the fight before that. The fight before that has one of my favorite fighters of all time in Rose Namajunas. And maybe let's start there. But like, to me, there's not really much to talk about in that fight. The first fight with Jessica Andrade, she was absolutely smashing Jessica Andrade all over the place. And she held on to the Kimura too long the first time and got slammed, and then held onto it too long the second time. And then obviously we saw what happened. To me, all that needs to, like, Jessica Andrade is so late in her career at this point. I don't mean late as in she should be retiring, but like she's the fighter she's going to be now. You're not going to see Jessica Andrade become a Ioana and Jacek type counter striker. Andrade is going to come at you. She's going to throw big hooks. She's going to try and pressure you, and she's going to try and put you away. That's perfect for Rose. I'm sorry, it's perfect. Rose's superior footwork, her superior boxing, her superior ground game, if it gets there without her being slammed on her neck, is just phenomenal, right? And I think that Rose takes this pretty handily. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, the whole of the main card is phenomenal. I think Rose does take this. The only thing I'm worried about is the power that Andrade possesses.
Of course.
Because of what happened last time, and I feel like it would always be in the back of her mind, because I know Rose is a very, very heavy mental thinker.
Yes,
and that's
yes,
the things
yes,
she's been on in the past, and it all came out obviously with regards to what happened when she lived at home and her previous ex, and then you had the Conor McGregor Khabib thing with the bus.
Yes.
That it plays into her head a lot. I think if she's clear-minded and doesn't try and has completely got past one of them, I just got knocked out because I held on to whatever too long, then as long as she's not, this break hasn't really hindered her, she's a world beater. I would love to see her versus the champion. I feel like it'll be a decision. I feel like it'll just be a 3-round 30-27 or close to something like that. But yeah, what else have we got? I feel like is it Petr Yan and Aldo?
Petr Yan versus Jose fucking Aldo. What a scrap that is.
It's quite an interesting few weeks, because I don't know if you've seen this morning. So when I was interviewing Jack Shaw, I didn't even realise that Pedro Munoz has been popped by COVID.
Yeah.
Aljamain Sterling has put his hand up against Edgar, and that fight versus the winner of Yan, even though Sterling is number one contender for me, and I said that on my podcast, if he's willing to put his number one contendership on the line against Edgar just to prove a point, wow. Especially in Edgar's debut, and he's coming down again. But touching on Yan and Aldo, I thought Aldo beat Moraes. I do too. A lot better than I thought he was going to do at bantamweight, because in his weigh-ins, oh my god, it was hard as hell.
Oh, it was like Edson Barbosa when he weighs in. Oh, Oof.
I don't think this is going the distance either way. I think one of them is going to finish the other. Maybe more Volkanovski finishing Aldo rather than the other way around, because Aldo knows what a 5-round war can be. Who do I want to win? I'll probably say Jan because of the future, and I think Aldo's probably got maybe 3 or 4 fights left in him, because of what he's been through and the amount of time that what his body's been through. I don't think he's got much time left. Whereas I think, and I said this on podcast to Jack Shaw, I think this bantamweight title will become a hot potato for the next 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think Aljamain Sterling can beat anyone on his day. I don't think Frankie Edgar will win against any of the top 5 guys, to be honest. I think Jose Aldo is likely to get sparked against Piotr Jan. The reason why is because Piotr Jan has a lot less damage. Jose has been in some wars, right? He's had some big knockouts, losses against Conor, obviously, and he's been in some just some training camp wars, that shooter box style. You hear about the stories coming out of Nova and Yao, like just people just getting blasted for fun.
The fights against Max.
Yeah, of course, like just beatings. And I think Piotr Jan this is going to be similar to when Cody Garbrandt fought Dominic Cruz. And what I mean by that is Piotr Jan has been watching Jose Aldo and has trained at Nova and Yao before. Now, the stories coming out from Jose Aldo's teammate is that Jose had his way with Piotr Jan when he went to Nova and Yao. Maybe. But even if that's true, you're a teammate of Jose Aldo. You're not going to then go and be like, yeah, Jose got fucked up, mate. Like, so, we take that with a pinch of salt. But I think that I think Piotr Jan is a future Hall of Famer. I think his style is phenomenal. He's relentless. That switch right hand that he's got is beautiful. The way he sets it up by stepping to the outside and he's then leading with his southpaw side and the high kicks he has. The only thing that I will say is that Piotr Jan leaves his left hand very low. So if Jose wants to hit him with some low kicks early, and then, not that Jose Aldo throws low kicks anymore, but if he wants to hit him with some low kicks early, whilst Piotr Jan keeps his right hand when he's in regular stance, he keeps his right hand very high on his chin. The left hand is low. So if Jose can catch him with a high kick with Jose's back leg, then boy, we might have some fun. But I think that, we've seen Piotr Jan go hard for 3 rounds. We've seen Piotr Jan keep up a pace. But Jose doesn't do that over 3 rounds, let alone 5 rounds. So I think that you could see a Piotr Jan run away or a Piotr Jan finish. But of course, this is Jose Aldo. He's a veteran. He's an MMA Hall of Famer. He's probably the greatest featherweight of all time. And, look, you can never count him out.
Yeah, it's between him and Max, and I know people try and throw Conor in there, but the way I see Conor is he's great. He's been great for the sport, but he's never defended one belt, and I think that's a massive thing in the sport. I feel like you're not a champion until you defended it in a certain aspect. But the greatest all-round of all time is Conor because of what he brings to the table. But the greatest featherweight is most likely Aldo or Max. Maybe Max as a touch because of the defeats that he's put on Aldo. But yeah, I'm not going to count Aldo out, and I don't think you would as well. But yeah, I think I would lean more towards Petr more than anything.
Yeah, I think so too. But I mean, just to touch on the Conor thing, like I don't think you can really put Conor in the greatest of all time bracket, to be truly honest with you, because what do we mean by greatest, right? Do we mean the monetary earnings? If so, of course, without a shadow of a doubt, he's the greatest fighter the UFC's ever seen. Do we mean achievements? Well, then it depends what you mean by achievement. If is achievement defending your title 10 times, 13 times, if you're Mighty Mouse or Anderson Silva? Is it greatest that you lose your belt twice, or you lose 2 fights and you come back and defeat those 2 guys in devastating fashion in GSP? Is it Ronda Rousey to be the first champion, the female champion, and just armbar everyone? Is it, what is it? What do we mean by achievement? I think that if you're talking about commercial success and the way that Conor has helped to build MMA as a sport and UFC as a brand, then of course he has to be in the discussion. And of course, his performance against Eddie Alvarez, his performance against Jose Aldo, his performance against Chad Mendes are some of the greatest performances you're ever going to see inside that octagon. Just absolute mastery. But then, I think Conor as a man has been Conor's greatest downfall. And I used to absolutely adore that man, from winning the 2 belts in Cage Warriors to then seeing him go to the UFC, to seeing what he did to his first 7 fights. And then
Brimage was his debut.
Brimage, everyone, just watching him grow was just so enthralling, right? But look, I think it's difficult to put McGregor into the same bracket as some of the other fighters, just because, as you say, he hasn't defended a title. He's jumped around. And if he'd have stayed at featherweight, which, Jesus, how he made featherweight is beyond me. But if he'd have stayed at featherweight and he'd have defended that belt a little bit more and then gone to lightweight, or even if he'd gone to lightweight and just stayed at lightweight, like, sure, we could be talking about that. I think Conor beats a lot of those lightweights. A lot of them.
I completely agree. I feel like what I meant by all around is, because I'm a wrestling geek, is mic skills, the way he portrays himself, the money, the fights that he gets, everything is an all-round bubble. He's the perfect fighter. He's the greatest of all time at that. To touch on who I believe is the greatest of all time now, I don't feel like they seem to. I think the show recently, Errol Hoana was touching on. They seem to be merging the rankings in male and female. That's wrong. It shouldn't even be a talk of them. There's one, is the other. Nunes is the greatest female fighter of all time. It's done. It's not even a question anymore. It's like Roger Federer. Someone had to go to so many of them heights even to pass him. Do I see that with someone like surpassing Nunes? No, but you never know. People probably thought that about GSP, Anderson Silva. On the male side, John Jones, even though he's a dick, he is the greatest of all time. If you take him out of the equation, it's an argument. It really is. And a lot of people don't think about it, but the greatest of all time, I feel, is Daniel Cormier in a sense, because if John Jones
was such a fucking wrestling shill. Look at you.
Daniel Cormier, what he did at his age, a bit like Couture, from being an Olympian to Strikeforce Heavyweight Grand Prix as an alternate to heavyweight and light heavyweight belts and defending them and being who he is, and he's such a humble guy, that resonates with me a lot. The fact that when John Jones came back and everyone was booing DC, but loving John Jones' antics because he talked about cocaine, it's like, no, yeah, I don't mind that, that's funny, but DC's the guy that people like. GSP, he's in that conversation. Maybe Anderson Silva, maybe what he's done with his end of his career, I think that's sort of grated that off a little bit. But yeah, I think there's always an argument. No one's ever going to be right. There's no perfect answer with greatest of all time. It's all down to opinion. And again, that's what I said earlier on. That's what we love about the sport. It being such, we can have banter with it, we can discuss it, we can argue, but we're all still friends.
Absolutely. I think you're blasphemous for not mentioning Demetrius Johnson.
Do you know what? When I was listening to you before, you're completely right, so I apologise. DJ is... If I had to rank them, I think it would be Jones, Nunes, then probably DJ/DC. Only what DJ did was amazing. He probably is one of the greatest of all time. I just think the way DC... I always think about the full picture, what DC was as a character. DJ didn't really get that platform, which I really, really hate. And I love what he's doing in Asia right now. He seems to be getting that more of a spotlight with his Twitch and stuff like that. So yeah, he's definitely top 3-ish DJ for me.
To me, the reason why I think the conversation has to be between GSP, DJ, and John Jones is because the way that MMA now is a completely different style of martial art than what it was 25 years ago. Previously, years ago, MMA was a mixture of individual martial arts. MMA now is its own martial art.
Yeah.
And you can see that with the likes of Zabit Magomedsharipov and Demetrius Johnson.
Yeah.
Right? Demetrius Johnson, I think, is the first high-level fighter that began, and this is the reason why, to me, he's all the way up there. Not just because of the title defenses and everything else. He started out doing MMA by utilizing different skill sets and putting them together. By the end, the couple of Henry Cejudo fights, by the Ray Borg fight, you're seeing him epitomize MMA as a brand new sport. the way that he pushes striking into wrestling, into ground fighting, into jiu-jitsu, into grappling, back up into striking, into, and we're not looking at, oh, he's a Muay Thai striker. No. He's striking. It's everything. There's elbows, there's clinch work, there's kickboxing, there's boxing, there's judo, there's karate, there's everything. It's encapsulated in one, and he, at the highest level of his weight class, and we can argue about the competition and everything else, he is one of the first fighters to put everything together as fluidly as he does. Now, that's also, to me, why you have to put John Jones and GSP up there, because GSP could blast double absolutely everyone, and he picked up wrestling late. He was a karate guy, as everyone knows. John Jones was just an athlete, right, and turned out to be one of the greatest fighters of all time. The way that the skills are blended is the reason why I have to put them as the greatest fighters of all time. Now, to me, I then delineate out to the likes of DC and Conor and Nunes and all these sorts of people. And Jesus, Nunes has to be there. For somebody that turned out predominantly as a grappler to begin with, to now have hands, son, like, she has to be in the conversation, right? But yeah, I mean, before we, spend another half an hour talking about that, I do want to get your thoughts on Volkanovski and Holloway. Do you think there's any difference in that fight or not?
Just one thing before you do transition to that. The one thing I do love when they introduce John Jones is that they say he's a look-see-do fighter.
Yeah.
And I love that, because that, to me, epitomizes MMA. Like, you see a lot of people, and this is probably for another conversation, where they go, oh, do you do that UFC? It's like saying, do you do that Premier League? Shut up, you dick. I love the fact that he's utilised that rather than saying he's a striker or a grappler. He's just a look-see-do fighter. You show me something, I'll evaluate it, and then I do it. It's as simple as that. And I feel like that's the new, like you mentioned earlier on about the difference between amateur MMA 8 years ago, 10 years ago with me, and then now the levels are not even comparable. It's ridiculous.
Yep.
And that's what you'll see. And maybe we'll see in 5 or 10 years. Like, technically right now, we're seeing this with Adesanya. We're seeing the evolution 100%. Of it. And if someone's going to rival John Jones, and I don't mean in a one-on-one fight, because I think the weight difference is too drastic for someone like that, in regards to what that certain... in relation to context of what that person can do as a career, in 3 or 5 years' time, Adesanya could be pound for pound the greatest of all time. And maybe that's a different conversation. But your question about Max and Volkanovski, it comes down to whether Max is telling the truth of if he's been training on his own.
Oh my God, please. This gives me fucking so much anxiety.
If he's been training on his own, he will not survive that against the level of Alex. He struggled with him the first time, and it was a close fight. It could have gone either way. I did mark it for Alex. But even though Alex's training has been a lot different, if you're training your own, and I know you shouldn't really be having them rounds of being hit in the head, once a week, once a fortnight, just getting them rounds in, them bodies in, that pressure in, even if you're at the highest level and you need to bring in certain people for it to push you a little bit. Peter Yan and Aldo can see going the distance, or Yan winning, simple. Volkanovski and Max Holloway, it could be like what happened to Anthony Smith and Glover Teixeira. It could be as bad as that. And that's considering how high a level Max is. I'm hoping I'm wrong, because I want to see that fight. I don't like that it's a rematch straight away, despite what Max had done in the past. I wanted to see something fresh for them both, and then you come back in a year's time. I like stuff like that. Unless it's controversial, don't do a rematch straight away. If you think about it, like we've got something on our show right now with Teddy Stringer and Mike Thompson.
Great fight.
Yes, a great fight. They fought each other, I think, about 13 months before. Mike won by decision on a Liverpool show. In that time, Teddy became our champion. Mike became interim champion. They clashed with each other. Teddy beat him. So they're now 1-1. Mike wants the rubber match. Mike wants his belt back. Teddy's more, I've got my redemption. Don't need to know. I'm going to move on. They will have to fight again at some point, whether it's pro or later down the line. So what we said to them is, we'll give you separate fights. If you both win, you most likely will come back together. And that's just the way it is. Or maybe in 2 fights' time. The rematch straight away made no sense. Let them build up. If they both lose the next fight, it still makes sense. That's what I love about this sport. I just don't like immediate rematches. But yeah, back onto Alex and Max. I'm quite worried.
Oh, mate, I'm so worried. I'm so worried. MMA fighters, and this shows the immaturity of MMA in a lot of ways, right? Imagine you're Floyd Mayweather, let's just say, or any of the boxing champs, Errol Spence, anyone, right? Imagine you're going into the biggest fight of your life, and your prep has been in your living room with your coach on the same Zoom application that we're using right now, and that's how you're prepping.
That's Luxy doing its finest.
Mate, like, who's he using as a sparring dummy? His fucking son? What are we doing here? Like, what are we doing? Please, somebody needs to tell me that this is bullshit. Because if not, oh my God.
If he's bluffing us and pulling the wool over our eyes,
amazing.
It's brilliant because you could see the best Max Holloway ever in this situation. But like we said about the Max Ruffkoff fight and coming in short notice, it's a very, very different time than what we're used to. Yeah. But main event wise, I would probably go Jan, Alex, and then Masvidal.
Woo! Woo! Oh, he's picked him, lads. He's fucking picked him. I think I will go Jan. I will go Volkanovski. The reason why I'll go Volkanovski is because I just think that Volkanovski just fought the perfect fight. And I think that it will be very difficult for Max to make the changes in the time he has had and in the situations he has had in order to beat Alex. Now, of course, Alex has to come at the same level he came the first fight. If he doesn't come at the same level and Max is anywhere near his best, that's an even closer fight. And you could argue that Max may get it. Who knows? Who knows? And just to talk on your point of the immediate rematch, my only reason why I like that is not necessarily because of everything that Max has done, because there's no one really fresh for him at featherweight. There's no one really that was knocking on the door to be like, I'm the number one contender. It was kind of just those two. So I kind of got it. I think it's kind of fine. Especially when Aldo went down, right? Like, and what are you going to do? Give Aldo Max again? Like, I don't want to see that shit. So, yeah, I'll go Alexander Volkanovski with the asterisk of if Max is pulling off the ultimate troll, then he has a great chance here. And then I will take Kamaru Usman. And that pains me to say because I fucking love Jorge Masvidal. But I just think that whilst we know that Jorge's intelligent, we know that he knows what he's doing. And if he was intelligent enough that when they came to him with the fight to begin with, he started training hard then. Because look, you're not going to teach Jorge how to fight. You're not going to teach him a new magic trick that he's going to learn in 3 weeks at this point, 45 fights deep, that's going to give him the magical key to beat Kamaru Usman. All Jorge needs to do is just get in fight shape, right? And if he's in fight shape, boy, have we got a scrap on our hands, son. But I don't know. If I feel like Jorge's character is what he portrays it to be, I think he would have been training, but nowhere near the intensity that he will need to keep up with Kamaru Usman for 5 rounds.
Yeah, and learning this from a lot of fighters that I've dealt with and I've got on my social media, like Lerone Murphy, Chris Fisher.
Great fighter.
Yeah.
Great fighter.
Jack Shaw, Marshman, Modestas Bukowskis, all them that I've been speaking to or worked with over the past few years. I know, even their coaches, Carl Prince, Richard Shaw, etc., they're all fighting a week on Wednesday. So They did a test yesterday at 1 o'clock. They can't leave the hotel. Now they're in each hotel room separately, not even together.
Yeah.
48 hours. Then they get the results. Then they fly out Wednesday night. Then they arrive in Abu Dhabi. Then they get tested again. Then they're self-isolating for 48 hours. And then they're allowed out. That's how crazy this is. You're on your own until you're in Abu Dhabi. And then you're still isolated. It's how things can work out in your own as a mental state, and the fact that Masvidal is going to have to do that and he's not really trained, that's the only thing that worries me. The fact that he's not even in his last week, he's not going to get the rounds out of the people. He's going to have to be in lockdown for most of this week until weigh-ins.
And the weight cut is going to be a problem as well.
What's he probably walking around at? Maybe 190?
Well, you don't know. That's the thing. You don't know, right? You don't know what he walks around at, really. I mean, you don't know what he walked around. Like, if he's just in lockdown, and of course, these guys are going to be training regardless. ATT is not just going to stop because lockdown is there. People will have been training regardless. People will have had coaches. They will have done stuff. But yeah, if he ballooned up, let's just say 200, 205, something like that, and you want him to make 170 in 3 days, essentially, because he's got all the lockdown, that's tough. And we can't count out how tough that would be for Masvidal to make that drastic cut, even if it's a 190, even if it's 20 pounds in 3 days is still a lot of weight to go through, you know?
Enough to put your body through it.
Yep. Definitely. So, I mean, it's an incredible card. At least the main card is anyway. The sort of the undercard sort of falls away a little bit. But there's still some good fights on that undercard. But yeah, I mean, I'm conscious of stealing too much of your time, Mr. Cross. So I'll offer you the chance for any closing thoughts. I want you to give all the shout outs to the Empires, to the UKFCs, to everything else, to whatever you want, and then we'll wrap this up.
I feel bad now because I said I've only got 90 minutes. I could keep on going if you wanted to. That's not a problem.
Oh mate, it's fine. Don't worry about it. We'll wrap this up, and as I said, we've got an episode. I'll get you back on when you release the Empire news, and we can talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, shout outs. I'm normally asking that question, so I don't really think about it. I've got a crazy team, like I mentioned before, around me, and that goes more to I won't even call them team, more like the friends that are around me, which is unreal, and people I get to work with, like yourselves, at Pantheon. I've got the guys at Grapple Fest. I'm lucky enough to have such the people around me, which I can just drop on a whim and say, have you got this? I need this. And I think that's what this community is about, and that's what I love. So thanks to like you, Sam, Liam, at Pantheon, and I love what you guys are doing. My sponsors, which they always fluctuate. You always lose sponsors, you always get them back. But people that have stuck by me, Progress Jiu-Jitsu with James and the team, Barefoot with Sam and his team there under Progress, Iddy Pure, John and his missus Natasha. Love working with them guys. I'm looking to be supported at the minute by AP Hall, which is a good friend, Building Works. My mind's going blank, which I hate. Swifty Scooters, which have just come on board. Jason and his team there, what they're doing for fitness and the scooter side and electrics and helping the ecosystem. And it's just, I love stuff like that. And the fact that they're a Manchester brand, literally a few miles away from me, I always support local. UK Fighting Championships, which obviously I'm the president of, so I've loved being part of that team for the last 4 or 5 years, with Steve and Aaron Aber, which if you ever get Aaron on, what a story he's had in his life. I would love you to get Steve, but he doesn't like talking, he doesn't like being on camera, which doesn't help. But yeah, UKFC wise, if I can go on off radius, but Pitbull, we've got Miller's Taxis, the amount of people around you that don't technically always want something back, and obviously you want to give as much. You probably been around them as well. Don't want much back. They're the people that you can easily work with because they would drop things for you and don't want to. Oh, I'm only doing this if you do this. They're the harder people to work with. Whereas if you're more relaxed about just supporting people, and it's not about a monetary figure all the time, and it's not about gains and losses. A lot of people are not in that position, lucky enough, like maybe what we're in, but definitely I'm thankful for them. My Mrs. Catherine, she's like my rock. I wouldn't be able to do. I wouldn't have, and this, you'll love me say this, I wouldn't have left Manchester as Empire to go to Leeds without her, because it was a confidence boost and she drives and stuff like that, and I'm able just to sit on my phone and work. And so, yeah, I'll probably miss a load of people, but I don't mean to.
It always happens, my friend. And if you can just drop your Instagram handle and where people can find you.
I think my Instagram handle's Jake the Saint Cross.
It is.
I always forget that one. But I mostly post about event stuff on Empire Grappling or UK Fighting Championships, which is UKFC MMA. The podcast, the Laugh Pod, is on Instagram. I think that's it.
Beautiful. Well, look, I mean, I know that you were originally strapped for time and maybe less strapped for time now, but either way, a man that has got as many spinning plates on his hands as you have, I am very, very grateful for your time. So thank you very much for coming on. And like I said, when you announce that news next week, feel free to jump back on and we'll have a discussion about it.
Just one thing before you go, I'm wondering if
Absolutely.
you're for Polaris this weekend.
Ooh. So this one's actually a little bit close to my heart, right? Like it's really close to my heart. I've spent some time with Ross. I've spent some time with Jed. Taylor Perman is actually one of the main guys in the stable that I train under. I train under as the our team coach. So I think Jesus. I think to take it all, I think it's hard to go outside of Ross or Freddie. I think that Shane Curtis is obviously an underrated grappler, and I'm really excited to see what he can do in his first match. But his first match is a tough one. Like, Bradley Hill's no fucking joke, right?
Oh, I didn't know that they'd been released, the brackets.
Yeah, the brackets were released yesterday. Yeah. So Shane,
did you know that they're recording it on Wednesday?
I did know that, yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I think Shane Curtis Bradley Hill is a great match. I think
maybe that's something that shouldn't have been released, so I apologise. But
I'm going to edit that bit out. Don't you worry. I'm going to edit that bit out. But yeah, Bradley Hill Shane Curtis is a great match. I think that Taylor Perman Nastasha is a great match. I can see Taylor winning that. But then obviously Tom Breese and Freddie Voscarone, Jesus, just fucking chuck the Giants together to begin with, right? And let's have some fun and see what happens.
Yeah, I think my pick is, and I've worked with Ross over the years at my events. He was Grapple Nation middleweight champion in 2015, and then his Team South team, which included Freddie, walked through Team North last April, so April 2019. Freddie is an unbelievable guy. What he can do, I think Freddie takes this. It'll be interesting to see how the bracket works out, but if he gets past Tom, I think it's his for the taking. But I am interested to look at like your Shane's. And you maybe Dominic Dillon's and see how they do. And Shane's definitely underdog in this, and he even put a post on himself. I'm looking forward to it on Saturday. Is it on?
I agree.
Fight Pass, isn't it?
It's on Fight Pass on Saturday. Yeah, Fight Pass 8:00 Saturday. And look, I mean, I will say this not just because he's from my team, quote unquote, but Taylor Perman is a sleeper in this. He's a very, very good grappler. You know, brown belt no-gi IBJJF world champion. He beat Roberto Jimenez with the triangle in the gi. Like that kid can grapple, and obviously he's got a really tough side of the bracket. He's got some big guys, and he walks around about 82 kilos, right? So he's a little bit undersized against Freddie and these guys. But look, if anyone watched Grapple Fest, you saw the performance that Theon put against Tayana, wow. And Jesus Christ, if you know, just phenomenal stuff. So obviously look out for Taylor, but yeah, I'm really pleased to see Polaris back. I think they're a great promotion, and it's good to see them. It's good to see them back. But yeah, I think I don't know. Ross's game is just so tricky, and Freddie is a very pressure orientated guy, and I think that as we saw in ADCC, like JT Torres couldn't pass Ross's guard and solidify anything. So I think that's going to be a tough ask for. I mean, Freddie's obviously massive, and the strength advantage is crazy in comparison to JT. But I mean, if you're going to go Freddie, fuck it, I'll go Ross, and then we can see who comes out on top at the end of it.
Sweet, nice one, dude. If you need me on again, let me know. But I'm sure once this comes out next week, my details. If you want me on, that's fine with me.
Of course, mate. I'd love to. Thank you very much for your time.
No worries, dude. Nice one.